Welcome back to Harbor. What's been the role of talk radio in fueling the heated language? Also, what are people saying out there? What do people think about this tragedy last week? I want to go to the radio jocks and really experts and our friends. Michael Smerconic, the syndicated radio talk show host, is on here a lot as my sub, and I'm glad to have him. He's an MSNBC contributor, of course. And he's Stephen Collins, host of the radio talk show Philly Speaks. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on. First, Michael, what are people saying out there? You've got a lot of hours with people. What are they saying about this tragedy and its meaning politically?
Well, what I'm hearing mostly from callers, and I've talked about it for 6 hours already this week, is that they don't see a causal connection, a direct causal connection between all, as I put it, the hatriolic comments and the shooting incident on Saturday in Arizona. However, they view this as an opportunity to have a conversation about the terrible level of discourse in the nation, something that's been a mainstay of my program for a number of years, because I think it's appalling. It's been getting worse. And although I'm not one to say that gun belongs in the hand of a particular talk show host because they caused it, I am here to say that I hope it's an opportunity for us to reflect, because things are way out of hand. I've been doing this for 15 years, Chris, and it has never been at the fever pitch that I have found it since this president came into office.
Stephen, I have to tell you that I'll mention a couple names without getting into too many fights. People like Mark Levin, Michael Savage, for example, who every time you listen to them are furious at the left, with anger it just builds and builds in their voice, and by the time they go to commercial, they're just in some rage every night with ugly talk, ugly sounding talk, and it never changes, it never modulates. They must have an audience. I looked at the numbers today. They have big audiences, and I guess that's the question. Why, and is there ever going to stop if it keeps working?
The sheriff in Tucson was absolutely right, Chris. It does impact people who may have a mental problem or may not, and may just have an anger toward government, but a little push to the right, and they are there. And that little girl went down to meet the congressperson who lost her life for absolutely nothing, is a witness to what we've seen over and over again. This kind of violence, the idea that Sarah Palin, who was a governor of a state, would put crosshairs over congressional districts, and then a week or so later, a congressperson is almost fatally shot, and a federal judge is killed, and other bystanders who came out to meet their congressperson were shot the way they were. There is a direct relationship. This person, I get that he's mentally ill, but how do we know that what he heard on his radio, saw on his website, did not impact him to make that decision?
I guess the question to you, Michael, you and I are both within the 40-yard line, so I don't think we operate too far downfield in either direction. I speak for both of us. I think we're somewhere near center left, center right, depending on the issue. There are some people that work at the extremes. They work at the 5-yard line from either the left or the right, and they do see the other end of the field as evil, as awful, not just disagreeable, but evil. And they use that language when they talk about the other side. Isn't that part of the problem? And my question is, doesn't that give them moral license to people who have crazy minds to start with?
Short answer is yes. You mentioned earlier in the program that you find it objectionable when everything is cast as the government. The government is doing this, that, or the other thing. My pet peeve is the way that this is all cast as a revolution. I mean, to listen to some of this talk, Chris, you would swear that we're about to overthrow King George III. And what I object to is an issue like taxes.
We didn't elect King George. We didn't elect King George. I keep reminding people of that. You got what you voted for. You know, it's not like they came from Mars, these people are from London. We keep putting them in office. You want to stop re-electing the same old guy every year in Congress or woman if you want change. You know, it's self-directed, most of this. But I think you're right.
What I see happening is I see that revolutionary script then eliciting a response from the audience. And when I say this, I know you'll remember it. I remember Congressman Mike Castle being at a town hall meeting in Delaware when this thing was reaching its fever pitch. And a woman stands up and she is frothing at the mouth, and she is screaming, "I want my country back." Well, she wants her country back from the Muslim Kenyan-born president. And the insanity of all of this is insanity of all of this is that the audience, and I had this conversation with Governor Castle, the audience was right there with her, and I looked at that video, I was frightened. I said, these are people who are on the edge, and if somebody pushes them over, God help us all.